December 3rd, 1959. The notices appeared on 30 apartment doors in a 6-story building on 142nd Street between Lenox and 7th Avenue. White paper, black letters, official language that meant one thing: get out. Notice of eviction. You are hereby notified that your tenancy at this address will terminate on December 31st, 1959. You have 28 days to vacate the premises. No explanation, no offer of relocation, no acknowledgement that December 31st was New Year's Eve, that it was the middle of winter, that these were families with children who'd been living in this building for years, some for decades. Just get out. The landlord's name was printed at the bottom of each notice: Harrison Properties, LLC. Owner, Mr. Gerald Harrison. By December 4th, every family in that building knew exactly what was happening and exactly why. They were being pushed out to make room for something more profitable. The building at 530 West 142nd Street wasn't fancy. 6 stories, 30 apartments, 5 units per floor. Built in 1924, it had weathered the Depression, housed generations of working families, and stood as one of the last affordable places in a neighborhood where rents were climbing faster than wages. Gerald Harrison had purchased the building 8 months earlier for $180,000. He was a real estate developer from Connecticut, white, wealthy, and part of a wave of investors who discovered that Harlem's proximity to Midtown made it prime territory for what they called urban renewal. Urban renewal meant buy low, push out the current residents, renovate, rent high to white professionals who wanted short commutes. It was legal, it was profitable, and it was happening all over Harlem. Harrison had been patient. He'd waited 8 months, watching the building, studying the tenants, calculating when and how to clear them out most efficiently. December was perfect. Who wants to apartment hunt in winter? Who has money saved after Thanksgiving? Who can organize a legal defense during Christmas? The eviction notices were strategic, and Harrison expected them to work exactly as planned. The families would leave, he'd renovate, and by spring, he'd be renting at triple the current rate. What Harrison didn't know was that apartment 3C housed Mrs. Dorothy Chen, a 68-year-old woman who'd been friends with Bumpy Johnson's mother 30 years ago and who still called Bumpy's wife Mamie every Sunday after church. And Mrs. Chen called Mamie on December 4th, crying. Bumpy received the phone call at Small's Paradise at 2:17 p.m. Mamie's voice was tight with anger. There's 30 families being thrown out of their homes in winter. Children, elderly people, everyone. Some landlord from Connecticut thinks he can just— What's the address? Bumpy interrupted quietly. 530 West 142nd. I'll handle it. Bumpy, it's legal. The eviction notices are— I said I'll handle it. Bumpy hung up, stood from his desk, and called Julius Gordon. Get me everything on a Gerald Harrison, real estate developer, Connecticut. He owns a building on 142nd. What do you need? Everything. Business partners, bank accounts, properties, debts. Who he owes, who owes him, every deal he's made in the last 5 years. I want it by tomorrow morning. What happened? He's evicting 30 families in December. Julius didn't ask any more questions. He understood. December 5th, 8 a.m. Julius arrived at Small's Paradise with a folder 3 inches thick. Harrison's overextended, Julius said, spreading documents across Bumpy's desk. He bought 4 Harlem buildings in the last year. Total investment, $720,000. He borrowed $600,000 from 3 different banks. His business model requires pushing out current tenants and renovating fast. He needs to start generating new rent by spring, or he defaults on his loans. Which banks? Chase Manhattan, First National, and Harlem Savings. Harlem Savings, Bumpy repeated. That's Walter Green's bank. Yeah. Harrison borrowed $180,000 from them specifically for 142nd Street. Bumpy leaned back in his chair. Walter Green was the president of Harlem Savings and Loan. They'd known each other for 20 years. Green had financed businesses in Harlem since the 1930s, supported black entrepreneurs when no white bank would. Bumpy also owed Green a favor from 1953, when Bumpy had quietly resolved a problem involving Green's son and a gambling debt. "What else?" Bumpy asked. "Harrison's got a business partner, Richard Kowalski. They share ownership in 2 of the 4 buildings. 142nd Street is Harrison's solo project, but Kowalski's invested in the others. If Harrison fails on 142nd, Kowalski pulls out of the whole operation." "Where does Kowalski live?" "Manhattan, Upper East Side, but he's got a wife who's very involved in charity work, high society. She's on the board of the Museum of Modern Art." Bumpy smiled slightly. "Anything else?" "Harrison's using Murphy Construction for the renovations. They're scheduled to start January 2nd. He's already paid them a $30,000 deposit." "Murphy Construction, Irish crew out of the Bronx." "Yeah, union shop. I know the union boss. We've worked together before." Julius waited. "Here's what we're going to do," Bumpy said. December 5th, 11 a.m. Bumpy called Walter Green at Harlem Savings and Loan. "Walter, it's Bumpy. I need to talk to you about a loan you made to Gerald Harrison. I can't discuss client information, you know that. Harrison's evicting 30 families from 142nd Street in winter. Families with children, elderly people. Some of them have lived there for 20 years. There was silence on the line. "Walter, you've financed half the black businesses in Harlem. You've given loans to people nobody else would touch. You built your bank on helping this community. And now you're financing someone who's destroying it. Bumpy, I didn't know. Now you know. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to review Harrison's loan. You're going to find that he hasn't met certain terms, and you're going to call that loan due immediately. I can't just, yes you can. Read the fine print. Every loan has clauses. Use them. And if I don't?" Bumpy's voice didn't change tone. "Then everyone in Harlem will know that Harlem Savings and Loan financed the eviction of 30 black families in winter during Christmas. You'll lose every account, every customer, every bit of goodwill you've built over 30 years. Your bank won't survive the month." Another silence. "I'll review the loan," Walter said quietly. "Good. Do it today." December 5th, 2 p.m. Bumpy met with Sean Murphy, head of Murphy Construction, at a diner in the Bronx. Murphy was a thick-shouldered Irishman in his 50s who'd built half the buildings in Harlem over the past 20 years. He employed union workers, paid fair wages, and had a reputation for finishing jobs on time. "Sean, you're scheduled to renovate 142nd Street in January." "Yeah, Harrison job. Good contract." "He's evicting 30 families to do it. In winter." Murphy's expression changed. "I didn't know that. Now you know." "Bumpy, I can't just walk away from a contract. I've got crews scheduled, materials ordered." "Yes, you can. Find a clause, delay the job, renegotiate terms, do whatever you need to do, but you're not starting that renovation in January. Harrison will sue me. Let him. By the time that lawsuit goes anywhere, this situation will be resolved." Murphy rubbed his face. "You're putting me in a difficult position." "Harrison's putting 30 families in a difficult position. You're just postponing a job." Murphy was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "I'll delay it, but you owe me one." "I know." December 6th, 9 a.m. Richard Kowalski received a phone call from an anonymous source, actually a journalist Bumpy had worked with before, asking about his real estate investments, and specifically about mass evictions in Harlem. "Mr. Kowalski, we're writing a story about displacement of minority families in Harlem. Your name came up as a business partner in several properties. Can you comment on the eviction of 30 families from 142nd Street? I'm not directly involved in that property." But you're a business partner with Gerald Harrison, who owns it, and you share ownership in 2 other buildings where similar evictions are planned. Our readers would be very interested in knowing how these practices align with your wife's charitable work, particularly her position on the MoMA board. Kowalski's voice went cold. This conversation is over. But the damage was done. The threat was clear. If the evictions proceeded, the story would run. Kowalski's wife would be publicly associated with displacing minority families. Her social standing, and by extension, his business reputation, would suffer. Kowalski called Harrison 30 minutes later. "Gerald, we need to talk about 142nd Street. December 6th, 11 a.m. Gerald Harrison sat in his office going through messages. Walter Green had called demanding immediate repayment of the $180,000 loan, apparently citing some obscure clause about property use inconsistent with community standards. Murphy Construction had sent a letter postponing the renovation start date from January 2nd to a date to be determined pending contract renegotiation. Richard Kowalski had called saying he was uncomfortable with the 142nd Street project and wanted to discuss alternatives. And most troubling, 2 of his other projects were suddenly experiencing problems. Union workers at one site had walked off the job citing safety concerns. The city had issued stop work orders at another site for permit irregularities that hadn't existed last week. Harrison wasn't stupid. He understood what was happening. Someone was systematically dismantling his operation, and he had a pretty good idea who. December 7th, 3 p.m. Gerald Harrison requested a meeting with Bumpy Johnson. They met at Small's Paradise. Harrison arrived in a tailored suit carrying a briefcase, looking like a man trying very hard not to show that he was rattled. Bumpy sat at his usual corner table. Julius stood nearby. Harrison sat down without being invited. "Mr. Johnson, I think there's been a misunderstanding about 142nd Street. "No misunderstanding. You're evicting 30 families in winter. That's very clear. It's a legal eviction. I own the building. I have the right. You have the legal right, but you don't have the moral right, and you don't have the practical right to do it in my neighborhood without consequences. Your neighborhood, you don't own. I protect it, which means I protect the people in it, and you're trying to throw 30 families onto the street during Christmas." Harrison opened his briefcase. "Look, I'm willing to negotiate. I can offer relocation assistance, maybe extend the deadline to March. I don't want your relocation assistance. I want you to cancel the evictions. I can't do that. I've invested $180,000. I have business obligations. Your loan from Harlem Savings has been called due. Your construction company has delayed your renovation. Your business partner is backing out. Your other projects are experiencing problems, and I'm just getting started." Harrison's jaw tightened. "You can't do this. I'm already doing it, and it will continue until those eviction notices are withdrawn. I'll sue you. Sue me for what? I haven't done anything illegal. Banks review loans. Construction companies renegotiate contracts. Workers cite safety concerns. Permits get scrutinized. These things happen." Harrison stared at him. "What do you want?" "I want you to sell the building." "To who?" "To the families living in it." Harrison actually laughed. "They can't afford to buy it. None of them have that kind of money." "They will, collectively. 30 families pooling resources can come up with a down payment. They'll get a mortgage from Harlem Savings and Loan at favorable terms, and you'll sell at a fair price, not the inflated rate you're hoping for after renovation, but what you paid, $180,000. That's exactly what I paid. I don't make any profit. You don't lose anything either. You get your investment back, you walk away clean, and 30 families keep their homes. And if I refuse?" Bumpy's expression didn't change. Then your other 3 buildings experience the same problems as 142nd Street. Your loans get called. Your contractors walk away. Your business partner pulls out entirely. And by the time you navigate all the legal and financial problems I create, you'll have lost far more than the profit you hoped to make. Harrison sat very still. You have 48 hours to decide, Bumpy said. After that, my offer expires and things get much worse. December 9th, 10 a.m. Gerald Harrison's lawyer called Walter Green at Harlem Savings and Loan. My client is prepared to sell 530 West 142nd Street to the current tenants for $180,000. He needs confirmation that your bank will provide mortgage financing. Walter Green smiled. We can do that. 30 families, collective ownership, mortgage terms over 20 years at 4% interest. They'll need to come up with a $30,000 down payment, but I expect they can manage that. They could. Within 3 days, the 30 families had pooled savings, borrowed from relatives, and received donations from neighbors. The down payment was raised. On December 14th, Gerald Harrison sold 530 West 142nd Street to the 142nd Street Housing Collective for $180,000. The eviction notices were withdrawn. The families stayed. December 25, 1959. Christmas Day. The 6-story building on 142nd Street was decorated with lights. Every window glowed. You could hear music and laughter from the street. Mrs. Dorothy Chen knocked on the door of apartment 3C, her apartment, and welcomed her daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren inside. "Merry Christmas, Mama," her daughter said. "I'm so glad you didn't have to move." "Me too, baby. Me too." Later that evening, Mrs. Chen called Mame Johnson. "Thank you," she said simply. "Tell Bumpy thank you. We own our homes now. We can't be pushed out ever again." "He knows," Mame said. "He's glad it worked out." What Mame didn't say was that Bumpy had done one more thing. He'd had Julius track Gerald Harrison's movements for the next 6 months. Any time Harrison tried to purchase another building in Harlem, he encountered problems. Loans denied, permits delayed, contractors unavailable. By June 1960, Harrison had sold his remaining Harlem properties and returned to Connecticut. He never invested in Harlem again. The story of 142nd Street became legend in Harlem. Not because of violence, there hadn't been any. Not because of illegal action. Everything Bumpy did was perfectly legal, just strategic, coordinated, and relentless. But because it proved something important. Power isn't just about what you can destroy. It's about what you can build and protect. Bumpy Johnson could have burned Harrison's buildings, could have had him hurt, could have made him disappear. Instead, he did something more meaningful. He used the system against itself, used banks, contractors, business partners, and social pressure to force a different outcome. And 30 families kept their homes. More than that, they owned them now, collectively, a model that other buildings in Harlem would eventually follow. When people asked Bumpy about it later, he said something that became part of his legend. Harrison saw 30 families as obstacles. I saw them as 30 reasons to fight. That's the difference between someone who sees Harlem as property and someone who sees it as home. The 142nd Street Housing Collective exists to this day. The building is still owned by the descendants of those original 30 families, and in the lobby there's a small plaque that reads, "Purchased December 14, 1959. 30 families, 1 home. May it stand forever." It doesn't mention Bumpy Johnson's name, but everyone who lives there knows exactly why they still have a place to call home. And every December 14th, they celebrate not just the purchase, but the principle behind it. That community is stronger than capital. That 30 families united are more powerful than one landlord with money. and that sometimes the greatest victory isn't destroying your enemy, it's making them undo their own injustice. Harrison tried to evict 30 families in winter. Bumpy made him sell them the building instead. And in doing so, he didn't just solve a problem, he created a legacy. One that's still standing on 142nd Street 65 years later, proving that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation. Taking what was meant to displace people and turning it into something that can never displace them again. Ownership, community, home.